It's not your job to question us. You are here only to watch.
15 years after the Great Famine, English nurse Lib Wright arrives in a rural village in Ireland, where she's to watch over a girl who hasn't eaten in 4 months to see if a miracle is taking place. Fighting against strict religious belief, anti-English sentiment, and the trauma of the famine, Lib starts to bond with this strange child. Like all sad and slightly arty period films, The Wonder had sort of softly been on my radar, but my interest in it was really piqued when someone tweeted about it with a clip of the opening of the film. And if you haven't seen that, then welcome to my spoilers policy, which is that something is not a spoiler if it happens in the first 5 minutes of the movie. And consider yourself forewarned. So the movie kicks off with something completely unexpected for an 1800s set drama, which is the interior of a film studio. And we're looking at a set. It's a house. It's just the interior set, so it's not like an external house thing. It's like scaffolding built up around these walls. And someone starts to narrate over the top, who's Niamh Algar, who's in the film, and she basically introduces the setting, but also the central theme of the film. As she's speaking slowly, the camera turns around and dollies into the interior of a ship, and we see Lib at the end of this table writing. And so a couple of seconds after the camera has entered into this space, we're in that time and place. I've seen a bit of divisive commentary about this online. I think some people feel like it froze them out of the movie. And I would encourage you to see that as exactly the point of this. It's a destabilizing, subversive thing to do at the start of a period film, any fiction film really, to foreground that element of filmmaking. But it's not just this playful meta-ness. In fact, I think it's quite the opposite. It's almost disturbing in the way that it's done, which ties into the psychological drama elements of the film. And it's interesting because what it does is invite the viewer to consider the central theme of the film, which is belief and the stories that we tell ourselves. This is almost verbatim what Niamh Algar is basically saying at the start. And although there's not much meta else in the rest of the film, there are a couple more moments, and again, they're all really jarring and unsettling. I think it's a fab introduction to the movie. So getting the obvious stuff out of the way, Florence Pugh excels in this film. We love Florence, we stan. Pugh excels as this thorny, complex woman who is pushing up against lots of social boundaries and, to be fair, is really not a good communicator. You know, she's very much out of place here as a woman who's going into a situation largely set up by and overseen by men, as an English person going to Ireland, and as someone who's kind of bringing their own trauma and stuff to the background trauma of the famine that's really still well within living memory. And just as an aside, it's really good to see this topic being talked about in British film. It's something I don't think I've seen basically anywhere else. And it's just terrible. The famine was this huge scar in the kind of psyche of Ireland. And as a British kid, like, I didn't hear anything about it apart from jokes, which is an awful thing. But I think it's kind of just become part of a punchline in like English culture, which is just disgusting. So it's good to see movies like this that, although the film's not directly about the famine, it's really significant that there is this background of famine, and then in front of that, there's this young woman who's making a conscious, religiously motivated decision to not eat, which I found just like fascinating and yeah, really informative and important. She really inhabits the role in a way that's often referred to as like the gold standard of acting, and it's difficult to see her underneath. So that's not a surprise. We love Florence. But what was a surprise to me was the person who she's opposite for most of the film, who is the young and pretty inexperienced Keela Lord Cassidy. She plays Anna, who's this fasting girl, and she actually hasn't done much. I really couldn't find anything in particular that I'd seen that she was in. And her mum is in this film, who is a more well-known Irish actor, Elaine Cassidy. So her you would recognise from stuff like The Others and Fingersmith and some more recent stuff. And it's fun to see them have this kind of mother-daughter relationship in there. It felt like, looking back at it, it felt like something very natural, but there is a lot of really good naturalistic acting in this, so it doesn't actually stand out in that respect. So the first meeting between Anna, Keela Lord Cassidy, and Mrs. Wright, Florence Pugh, is really everything that this movie is about, everything that psychological cinema should be. It's this electrifying confrontation as these two very different personalities kind of rub up against each other. You know, on one hand you have Mrs. Wright, Lib, as this kind of alternately caring and cold woman who is not particularly interested in comforting this child, but more in exposing what she assumes is fraudulent straight away. And on the opposite side, you have this young girl who is very deeply pious and expressing a worldview that's completely alien to this adult opposite her, and is obviously drinking in the attention of all of these adults around her who think something miraculous is happening. It's a creepy kid pushing up against boundaries, and it's accentuated by this really lush, deep, shadowy cinematography and beautiful production design. And there's also this creepy soundtrack that's a lot of like female vocalizations. It's someone will do something scary and then it will go, "Oh." So much so that my girlfriend has been following me around the house recently while I'm cooking or something, and just kind of following up behind me and going, "Oh." Spooky. We have spooky times at home. So there's this disarming and perplexing and disturbing meeting between these two people, and then Lib Wright goes back to her inn just totally confused. And I hope you like that, because that's basically the whole middle 45 minutes of the film. You know, I should say I really like this film and I think there's plenty to recommend about it, but this middle bit does feel kind of underbaked. To an extent, that's to be expected sometimes with psychological stuff. I've noticed that my attention often wanders when it's just about like subtext underneath the characters. And so what happens in this section of the movie is that you just get these like long shots of Florence Pugh eating with creepy music playing, and then her walking to this girl's house, creepy music. They have a conversation where she says something scary and like really religious, and then Florence Pugh goes home confused and a bit worried, and that's kind of the whole thing. So as much as I like the movie, you know, you've got this very slowly developing plot that occasionally feels like it's too slow. You have this slightly repetitive structure, and definitely I found the welcome kind of like wearing slightly thin during the middle. Still, plenty worse films have had the same kind of pacing problem, and it's not exactly a terrible thing to say, the middle of this movie unfortunately revolves around an excellent Florence Pugh performance. And also the movie is only 1 hour and 45 minutes long, so it's not like an Irishman situation where there is a lot of content and a lot of it is very slow. It is a kind of a movie you can watch after dinner when you come home from work and still get to bed in time for your commute the next day. And I would definitely invite you to watch this film because I think the wonders dive into the pain of Ireland's past, the strength of religious belief, and a clash between different women and different worldviews is a bracing and intense movie watching experience. Hope you enjoyed my review, and if you've seen The Wonder, because it's now live on Netflix internationally, I would love to have a chat with you about it in the comments below. So let's get down there and chat this one through. Have a good one, and I'll see you next time. Bye for now.